Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the material you send our way and really dig in to pull out the key insights, get right to the heart of it. Today, we're exploring Paramahansa Yogananda. He's the author of that, incredibly influential book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
A spiritual classic for many.
Absolutely. And we're using excerpts that you, our listener, shared with us. So our mission today is pretty clear. Understand who Yogananda was, where his philosophy came from.
Yeah, its origins.
What it might offer us, humanity, and how relevant it still feels today.
Maybe for the future, too.
Exactly. We'll touch on some fascinating bits, those early memories he had of past lives.
Right, quite unusual.
His meetings with these pretty extraordinary spiritual figures and the core ideas he taught. So just to kick things off, maybe think about this. How much can one person's way of thinking, their philosophy, really echo through time, affecting how we see things?
It's a great question.
Okay, let's get into it. Who was Paramahansa Yogananda?
Well, he started life as Mukundalal Ghosh, born into a Bengali family in India. And what's really striking right from the beginning, as you mentioned, is what he writes in the autobiography. These clear memories he claimed to have of a past life.
As a yogi, wasn't it? Somewhere in the Himalayas.
Exactly. A yogi in the Himalayas.
Oh.
So that spiritual inclination seems to have been there from the start. And it wasn't just him. His family environment played a role. His mother, for instance, actually met the famous Lahiri Mahasaya.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the story goes that Lahiri Mahasaya predicted that young Mukunda would have a significant spiritual destiny.
That's quite something. A prediction like that early on, it must have, resonated.
You'd think so, and that spiritual pull was definitely strong in him.
The excerpts mention him wanting to leave home as a boy, right? To head for the Himalayas.
Yes, a very strong desire to renounce everything and just go. His brother apparently stopped him initially.
Family intervention.
Happens. But that didn't stop his search. He pursued education, went to Serampore College, although it seems some teachers there found him maybe a little too focused on religion.
Overdrunk with religion, I think was the phrase used.
Something like that, yeah. But he did complete his studies, got his university degree.
So he had the formal education, but also this intense inner drive.
Absolutely. And that inner drive eventually led him to become a monk. He joined the Swami order.
Which has deep roots, doesn't it?
Very deep. It's a path of renunciation, spiritual seeking, philosophically tracing back to Shankara, the Advaita Vedanta philosopher. And it was when he became a monk that he was given the name Yogananda.
Meaning bliss through yoga, essentially.
Bliss through divine union, yes. And then his travels began in earnest. Across India, he met an incredible range of saints and spiritual masters. The sources mention some really extraordinary figures.
Like the saint with two bodies. The perfume saint.
Those, yes. And others like the levitating saint, Trilanga Swami, and Anandamoyi Ma, and importantly, his connection with the lineage figures like Babaji.
These encounters must have profoundly shaped his understanding, seeing these things firsthand.
Undoubtedly. It likely solidified his own experiences and maybe fueled his conviction to share this path more widely later on.
Which leads us to his journey west.
Yeah.
He went to America.
He did. As India's delegate to something called the International Congress of Religious Liberals in Boston, I believe.
That feels like a major turning point, taking these Eastern ideas to a Western audience.
A very pivotal moment. And that's really when his work in the West began seriously. He founded the Self-Realization Fellowship, or SRF.
Which still exists today, right? Spreading his teachings?
It does, yes. It became the vehicle for his work. And interestingly, going back to Lahiri Mahasaya,
The one who made the prediction to his mother.
That's him. He had also apparently foreseen that Yogananda's life story would be written down precisely because of the interest yoga would generate in the West.
Wow. So a life marked by these early signs, deep-seeking, incredible encounters, and then this mission to bridge East and West.
That sums it up pretty well.
Okay, so that gives us a good sense of the man. Now let's get to the core of his philosophy. What was he actually teaching?
Well, the absolute centerpiece is Kriya Yoga.
Kriya Yoga.
Okay, it's presented as a very specific yogic science, a technique. The aim is to quiet the senses, the constant mental chatter.
The sensory tumult, I think he called it.
Exactly, to still that tumult and achieve, conscious union with the infinite, with cosmic consciousness.
And where did this technique come from?
He received it directly from his guru, Sri Yukteswar, who in turn received it from Lahiri Mahasaya.
The lineage continues.
Who received it from the deathless master, Babaji. It's a direct lineage transmission. And Babaji, according to Yogananda, described Kriya not as something new, but as a revival.
A revival of what?
A revival of the same science of God realization known long ago by figures like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, and even, he said, by Christ and his disciples.
So he's positioning it as this ancient universal science of connecting with the divine.
Precisely. An ancient path, rediscovered or re-energized for the modern age. It's meant to be a direct way past the ego, past that feeling of separation that causes suffering.
That emphasis on direct seems key. It wasn't just about belief.
Absolutely not. That's a huge part of his philosophy. Direct experience. God realization, he called it. He wasn't satisfied with just, intellectual concepts or accepting things on faith alone. He personally sought that tangible perception of God.
Which ties into another big concept he talks about, Maya.
Yes, Maya, the cosmic illusion.
Explain that a bit. What did he mean by illusion?
He described it as this sort of veil, a cosmic hypnosis, almost, that makes us perceive duality, separation, relativity as the ultimate reality, when underlying it all is oneness, the unity of the Creator.
So Maya is what keeps us feeling separate and therefore suffering.
That's the idea. All conflict, all unhappiness stems from mistaking this changing show, this duality, for what's truly real. He even felt that scientific discoveries were increasingly confirming this ancient Vedic idea of underlying unity.
Interesting connection to science there. So if Maya is the illusion, how did he talk about God, the underlying reality?
He used several frameworks. He talked about God, the absolute, beyond creation, like the Father in Christian terms. Then there's the consciousness within creation, the Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness, the Son.
Wow.
And then the creative power that brings forth the universe, the Holy Ghost, or AUM, the cosmic vibration.
Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Right.
But from a yogic perspective.
Kind of bridging those concepts, yes. But he also used a very beautiful Sanskrit term, rasa,
Rasa.
meaning the most relishable. God experienced directly as bliss, as ever new, ever existing, ever conscious joy, especially in deep meditation. That's the ultimate goal, the soul's true desire.
Experiencing God as joy itself. That's it, yeah. Quite a perspective. What else is essential to his philosophy?
Well, there's a strong emphasis on faith. Not blind faith, but deep trust in divine protection. And also the power of will.
Human will.
Yes, using our God-given will effectively. He saw these as incredibly powerful forces, even capable of overriding things like negative astrological influences, which were commonly believed.
So agency and trust working together.
Exactly. And alongside that, the importance of a true guru.
Like Sri Yukteswar for him.
Yes. Finding a genuine spiritual guide was seen as crucial for providing that unerring guidance, that eternal shelter, as he put it.
And you mentioned interconnectedness earlier.
Right. He really highlighted that. He pointed to the work of the Indian scientist J.C. Bose.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. Didn't he work with plants?
He did. Bose created incredibly sensitive instruments that showed plants responding to stimuli much like animals do, demonstrating for Yogananda this underlying unity of all life.
Bringing science back in to illustrate a spiritual point.
Yes. And overall, his philosophy points beyond the limits of the material world. It emphasizes the potential we all have to reach higher states of consciousness.
Through yoga and meditation.
Through yoga, meditation, kriya, ultimately leading towards samadhi.
Which isn't just relaxation, right? It's something deeper.
Much deeper. A state of ecstatic, conscious union with the infinite. A direct taste of that ultimate reality beyond Maya. He also sometimes reinterpreted familiar religious stories from this Eastern viewpoint, like suggesting John the Baptist was a previous guru of Christ.
So it's a rich mix, yoga techniques, deep philosophy, personal experience, scriptural interpretation.
A very comprehensive system, yes.
Okay, so we've got a sense of what he taught. Where did these ideas actually come from? What were the sources for his philosophy, and maybe why these particular ideas?
Well, the sources are multifaceted, but maybe the most fundamental was his own direct personal experience.
You mean his mystical experiences?
Exactly. The autobiography is full of them. Visions he had of past lives, like we mentioned, but also visions of the Divine Mother, of Krishna. Even experiences like his guru, Sri Yukteswar, apparently materializing before him after his death.
Wow, okay. That's profound.
And his own deep states of meditation, reaching samadhi. These weren't just theories for him. They were lived realities that formed the bedrock of his understanding.
That makes sense, given his emphasis on needing direct perception. What else fed into it?
Hugely important was the guidance from his gurus.
Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahasaya, Babaji.
Yes, that whole lineage. They didn't just transmit the Kriya technique, they provided the context, the interpretation, the living wisdom to understand these higher truths. It was a direct transmission of knowledge.
So personal experience plus guidance from this established spiritual line.
Correct. And then, of course, the ancient scriptures of India.
The Vedas, Upanishads.
The Vedas, the Upanishads, certainly the Bhagavad Gita, which was central, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, other Shastras. He studied these deeply. But crucially, he interpreted them through the lens of his own experiences and the teachings of his guru lineage. It wasn't just academic study.
So the texts confirmed or elaborated on what he knew through experience and his teachers.
You could say that, yeah. It all wove together.
And what about all those other saints he met on his travels? Did they influence him too?
Definitely. Those encounters we talked about earlier, the perfume saint, the levitating saint, Anandamoyima, learning from their lives, their examples, their specific teachings, even their demonstrations of spiritual power, that all broadened his perspective. It showed the many ways spiritual truth can manifest.
It painted a richer picture of the spiritual landscape for him.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then there's a why. Why these ideas? Why this mission?
Yeah, what was driving him?
A big part seems to have been this perceived need, or maybe a calling, to bridge the gap, to connect Eastern spirituality with Western modes of thinking and understanding.
To make it accessible.
Exactly. Remember, he explicitly said he came to America to spread the creedless teachings of Kriya Yoga.
Creedless.
Yeah.
Implying universal, maybe.
Yeah.
Not tied to one specific religion.
That seems to be the implication. He wanted to present these practical techniques and philosophical insights in a way that could resonate with people in the West, people who are perhaps looking for something beyond dogma, something more experiential.
So a blend of deep, personal knowing, traditional wisdom, and this drive to share it universally.
That captures it well, a powerful combination of sources and motivations.
Okay, this really clarifies the foundations. Now let's shift to the impact. How does this philosophy actually help people, help mankind?
Well, on the most practical level, it offers a method, Kriya Yoga, primarily for individuals to have their own direct spiritual experiences.
Not just taking his word for it, but finding out for themselves.
Precisely. And through that experience, the goal is liberation. Liberation from the suffering that, in his view, comes from that illusion of being separate from Maya.
So it's a path out of suffering.
That's the promise. It also provides a really comprehensive way to understand reality, you know, a framework for the purpose of life that goes beyond just accumulating stuff or achieving worldly success.
A deeper sense of meaning.
Yes. And it really emphasizes the potential within each person.
How so?
It teaches that we're not just these limited bodies or personalities, that everyone has the capacity to transcend limitations and realize their inherent divine nature.
That's quite empowering.
It is. And the practices themselves, meditation, the Kriya techniques, they're aimed at cultivating tangible benefits like inner peace, calm, a sense of joy that isn't dependent on external circumstances.
Things people are definitely searching for.
Absolutely. And developing self-mastery, gaining control over the mind and emotions, greater resilience, really.
Okay, so clear individual benefits.
Yeah.
Does it offer anything for us collectively? For society?
I think it does. That emphasis on experiencing the divine within, experiencing the one Father, as he sometimes put it, that naturally leads to a feeling of universal brotherhood.
If everyone has that same divine spark.
Then the basis for division starts to dissolve, right? It fosters a sense of interconnectedness, compassion, empathy across different groups.
A foundation for unity?
Potentially, yes. And another key point is balance. He didn't advocate for everyone to just drop everything and become a hermit. No. He stressed balancing spiritual life with fulfilling your worldly responsibilities. Being in the world, but not of it, was the idea. Active, but detached internally.
So integrating spirituality into everyday life.
Exactly. And ultimately, the whole philosophy offers hope. Hope for evolving spiritually, for overcoming the cycle of birth and death, for reaching a state of lasting freedom and bliss.
So it addresses individual well-being, potential for social harmony, and ultimate spiritual goals. Quite encompassing.
It aims to be, yes.
Which brings us nicely to the final big question. How relevant is all this now? And looking ahead, for future generations, does it still hold up?
I think it's arguably more relevant than ever in some way.
Really? Why do you say that?
Well, think about our modern world. It's complex, often stressful, fast-paced.
Understatement of the year.
Right. And that deep human yearning for meaning, for purpose, for connection to something bigger than just the day-to-day grind, that hasn't gone away. If anything, it might be stronger. Yogananda's teachings speak directly to that core human need.
And the practical side. The techniques.
Yeah. The techniques like Kriya Yoga, meditation, these are tools that anyone can potentially use, regardless of their background or beliefs. Tools to manage stress, increase focus, enhance well-being. That's incredibly valuable today.
Practical tools for modern anxiety.
Exactly. And his focus on inner experience, on finding peace and fulfillment within, offers a really important counterpoint to our often very outward-focused, materialistic culture.
A reminder that happiness isn't just about acquiring things.
Precisely. And that idea of interconnectedness we discussed, think about global challenges, climate change, social divisions, pandemics, the understanding that we're all fundamentally linked, that our well-being is tied together. That perspective, rooted in spiritual realization, feels incredibly vital now. It fosters the compassion and cooperation we need.
Seeing the bigger picture through that lens of unity.
Yes. Also, we live in an age of information overload, right? So many conflicting voices, competing truths.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It is. Yogananda's emphasis on personal validation through direct experience encourages a kind of spiritual critical thinking. Test it for yourself. See if it resonates with your own inner knowing, rather than just accepting or rejecting things intellectually.
Trusting your own experience more.
And finally, just look at the facts. Yoga has spread massively in the West, just as Lahiri Mahasaya supposedly predicted. Interest in meditation, Eastern philosophy, and Yogananda's work specifically continues to grow.
So the interest is definitely there.
It suggests an ongoing, maybe even increasing, relevance for people today and likely for future generations who are seeking deeper answers, self-discovery, and genuine spiritual guidance.
So far from being dated, you'd say his philosophy offers both timeless wisdom and practical tools, very much needed for our current times.
I think that's a fair assessment, based on the material. It addresses enduring human questions and offers a path relevant to modern challenges.
Okay, that's a fascinating perspective on enduring relevance.
So just to wrap up our deep dive based on these excerpts, we see Paramahansa Yogananda as this figure shaped by, well, profound early spiritual insights.
And guided by that strong guru lineage.
Right, and really driven by this mission to share a direct path, Kriya Yoga, for self-realization. His philosophy draws on his own mystical life, ancient scriptures, but presented in a way meant to bridge East and West.
And the potential benefits are both personal inner peace, understanding reality more deeply.
Broader. Fostering that sense of unity, providing a framework for navigating life that still resonates quite powerfully today.
It certainly seems so. Okay, as we finish up, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe reflect on. How might integrating some of these principles, maybe the practice of Kriya Yoga, if you were to explore it, or even just contemplating Maya, that idea of cosmic illusion, how might that shift your own view of the world, your perception of reality day to day?
It's a thing to ponder.
Definitely. And if this conversation has piqued your interest, the source itself, Autobiography of a Yogi, is really the place to go for the full story. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back again exploring more fascinating ideas from the material you share with us.